Welcome to the Wildspire Conversations podcast. You get to be a fly on the wall for my intimate coaching sessions with inspiring entrepreneurs who are changing the world. I'm your host, Stephanie Benedetto Padovani, wild creation coach and soul storyteller at The Awakened Business, where I help coaches, therapists, and creative entrepreneurs craft an irresistible message and broadcast it to the world. In each conversation, I'll ask curious, playful questions, challenging us to connect with the deeper purpose and joy of what we're here to do. We may experience one or more of the following: articulation of their soul's message and mission, life-changing stories, insights, ahas, and wisdom nuggets, ideas for new products, services, or businesses. Truth is, I have no idea exactly what will emerge, because there's no agenda for this conversation. Anything can happen when we step into the unknown of infinite creativity, and that's where we're going to play. It's time to get Wildspired. Ryan Dunphy is a father, husband, Star Wars fan, Jeep lover, and adventurous entrepreneur. He's the director of member support in the Speakers, Authors, and Coaches Network on Facebook, which is where we originally met, and is a corporate guest speaker on time mastery for profitability by stress reduction. His passion project is the Adventurous Entrepreneurs Community, in which he helps entrepreneurs maximize their time and outsmart the overwhelm of entrepreneurship. In this conversation, Ryan asked for a better understanding of balance, which was his chosen word for 2020. What unfolds in our conversation is a delightful mix of productivity and time-saving gems. Ryan is so full of them that he just can't stop sharing them. Everything from tools and techniques to books and things that you can do to have more work-life balance in any environment. We discuss balance and what it is, what it's not. And toward the end of our conversation, Ryan reveals his brilliant framework for using a microniche to get to six figures, requiring only a handful of hours every month. And I had a lot of fun actually pulling his words together into a title and positioning for what might be a book, a course, or a methodology that is sure to be incredibly popular. The best place to connect with Ryan is on Facebook and the Adventurous Entrepreneurs Community Group. If you love real-world productivity tips so that you can live a full life and have sustainable balance as both a parent and an entrepreneur, you will love this rich conversation that also happens to be full of Star Wars references. Here's Ryan Dunphy. All right. Ryan, thank you so much for joining me here today. I'm really excited for this conversation.
Very nice. Stephanie, thank you for hosting. I appreciate it.
Oh, my great pleasure. And just so you know, as you're joining us, that we just had a nice little Star Wars convo, beautiful intro here. So I'm still basking in that, and the Force is with us.
Yeah.
So speaking of the Force, you are a force, Ryan. I'm just moved to share that since first meeting you, I felt welcome and invited in the Facebook group where we connected, and just your presence exudes that. So I'm just appreciating that in you, even in this moment.
Wonderful. Thank you. That makes me feel nice.
Yeah. So as we begin, like, what would you love to get from this conversation that would be really extraordinary for you?
So in 2020, my word has really been recalibration. Ever since March, a lot of people have had to recalibrate their lives and their businesses and their priorities and essentially how they do things. And I believe now that at the time of recording this, we're into August of 2020, and my new word I'm focused on is balance. And a lot of what I focus on with my clients over the last few years has been time management, time mastery, balance, prioritization. And about 2 years ago, I was in a conversation with somebody, and they were trying to chase after this work-life balance. And the person was really viewing it as a very static balance. If that seesaw is right in the middle of, at 5 o'clock, the whistle goes and, I slide off the back of my brontosaurus and I, pedal my way home, and I'm not doing anything work related until 9 o'clock the next morning. But those days are gone. And, with the integration of a smartphone, the conversation, and I'll spare you all the little details in between, but the where we arrived at was work-life balance should not be looked at as a static point, but rather a dynamic average. Because there are times when there's going to be heavy times at work. There's going to be times where it's heavy on the family time. And as long as you have proper synergy and communication on both sides, then you don't feel like you're getting your arms, Stretch Armstrong, pulled in each direction. You want to have integration of those. And if you're connected to work at home, you're probably also connected to home when you're at work. So now when people are working from home, everybody understands a little bit more when, they knew those entrepreneurs that say, well, nobody knows how hard it is to work from home, or anybody that was working remotely. We've all had to recalibrate. So my big word is balance now. And it's an ever evolving pursuit. It's like stretching and nutrition. You're kind of never done with it. So I would love even better balance and a better dynamic balance from this conversation, maybe a better understanding for myself and for others.
So what does that mean to you? What is balance for you?
I believe there needs to be a certain amount of stress and a certain amount of pressure. So one of the examples I give in my talks to corporations is a tire on a car. So at too low of a PSI, you have a flat tire. At too high of a PSI, you have an opportunity for that tire to explode when it reaches, too much pressure. But it has to be just enough, not too much, not too little. And I believe that's where we find that balance, when there's that synergy between work and not work, home and not home, and just being at peace. So, we started with Star Wars, but there must be balance in the Force. And I really think that, I'm a fan of the originals. Those are at the top of my list, and always will be, because that's what I grew up with. But I want to celebrate the newest movies, the sequel trilogy with Rey and Finn and Kylo Ren, because they did a really nice job of talking about balance and focusing on breath. And if you watch those movies, there's one scene at the end of The Force Awakens when Kylo Ren and Rey are fighting in the snow. And it's very chaotic. They're swinging the lightsabers all over the place, and they're not even hitting each other. They're hitting trees. And she has this moment where she's, holding back with the lightsaber, and she hits this point where she remembers, I need to breathe. And she goes, and like the music changes, and like she gets into this flow state and just has beautiful focus. And from there is almost effortless. And, it's referenced later in the movies that it was the first time that she ever held a lightsaber. Yet she had that calm and that focus, and she was able to do it. And I think that's a lot of what we're doing now is we're in this pandemic. People are exhausted. People are getting burned out. People are, cooped up, but we're breathing and focusing on what we can control. And I believe that after all this, we get to step into an age of appreciation, be able to go to the movie theater or Lowe's without a mask, or, ShopRite, wherever we go for our groceries. I believe that we get to enter a new age of appreciation if we have that mindset. But for me, balance is being able to fall asleep at night when I get into bed, and I don't have too much going on upstairs, that I'm feeling both productive and fulfilled at home.
I love that image that you just shared from Star Wars, that even in the first time of doing something. So I heard a couple different things in what you said, and it's interesting. I'd love to explore this a little bit.
Sure.
So you said just like having just the right amount of stress and pressure. And then you shared the image of that fight where there was, oh, remember to breathe. And then she just steps into this flow and it's effortless, even though she's never done this before. It's like she's just present with it. And I wonder, is there stress in that moment? Does there need to be stress in that moment when we show up and just breathe? What is
just enough? Not
yeah,
too
what
much,
is
not too little.
what is just enough? Like, what does that mean? What is just enough? How do we know when it's just enough versus too much?
Sure. So, if we go back to the car, the only reason the vehicle can move down the road is stress, and the stress exerted on the tire to the ground. And there's a huge complex system that leads up to that point, but the tire has to have enough stress on the pavement in order to propel the vehicle forward. If we try to go too fast, we will spin our tires. And we're very busy and we're doing a lot of things, but we're not productive. And there's a huge difference between being busy and being productive. Because working just for the sake of work is not very efficient. And I'm in the process of building some shelves here. And one of the things I'm going to have is a log. And then I'm going to have a log that's split down the middle with a maul. And I'm going to have another one that's on its side that I chop through with an axe. And it's going to take me about 100 times longer to cut that piece of wood in half as it would be standing it up and going with the grain and splitting it into firewood. Because I think a lot of people fall in the trap of, well, I'm working hard. I didn't have enough sleep last night, but I can go out and get another coffee. And too many people glorify exhaustion when we need to focus on what are the things that are going to be productive, what's going to move me forward, what's going to give me that traction if we're talking about that tire again. Instead of just spinning our tires and making a bunch of smoke and using all of our fuel and energy and not really going anywhere, it might look cool, but it's really not productive. There's that right amount of stress where Ray has, again, that balance in the force where, she's able to do the thing, to do the actions, to defend herself and then separate herself from that situation because it was not going to end well for either one or both of them. So she was able to step back from that situation. And I think the newer films did a wonderful job about talking about that balance a little deeper than the original films did.
Yeah, I can feel how much this speaks to you. So the thing that struck me, and I just want to poke and play around a little bit with this, I'm wondering if we switch up the metaphor a little bit, if we can see something different. Because, so just enough stress and the tire, right? Like, that's a cool metaphor. I love the traction and that works really well. But what I'm wondering, let me back up for a second. So here's what I see a lot of. Just like you're seeing the glorification of working hard and being exhausted, there's this fear that keeps many people in that cycle because we've been motivated by what we might term stress. We've been driven by fear or anger, or usually it's fear and anger, right? Like those are the ones that motivate us and move us. And so because I'll speak for myself, okay, for my own example. For a long time, I think I was primarily driven by fear. And I didn't know it because I wasn't aware that that was happening. But so many things in my life, the areas I would allow myself to go into or the things I would not go into. Like, for example, when I was a kid, I really wanted to try out for soccer, but I was afraid I'd be bad at it. And I was always like, I was the straight A student and the one who was good at everything she did. I mean, good God, who is that person, right? Like, especially the first time. Anyway, what a story that is. So because of that, I was allowing fear to dictate my life in ways I didn't realize. Even up until recently, I didn't see how small I was keeping my world. But often, at some point, when we're done being a victim, we move out of that and we're ready to be empowered. We then start using those things that kept us feeling like a victim to empowering us. So I used fear to get my butt in gear and do the things that I needed to do, and to motivate myself to have the discipline and the routines and show up and do the things like move through my fear and get out of my comfort zone and be uncomfortable. But what I've been exploring and just playing with, do we need that fear? Do we need that anger to motivate us? And as I've started to shift that, and I've heard about this in experience for others, but I'll talk again for myself. As I started to shift from being driven by fear and anger, at first it feels like, oh God, I'm not ever going to do anything, because that's all I've known that motivated me. But I need that stress in order to push myself. And if I don't have it, I'll stop creating and I'll lie on the couch all day. But what actually I'm beginning to experience, is that there's a different motivation. It's one that, and rather than being a push, like pushing me towards something out of fear or to get away from something, it's a draw. It's more like a magnet pulling me forward. And that motivation might be creativity or curiosity or inspiration that emerges in its place. So if there was another metaphor or an additional metaphor, like these are just ways of talking about it. Like, I love that too. It's almost like I like balance as a metaphor, because we're always correcting. We're always coming back into it, right? We're never in perfect balance. And that's an understanding that you have.
Even when right now, I'm in a standing desk. I'm standing on one leg. Yes, I am balanced, but there's a lot of small motions that are happening inside my body for that to happen.
Yeah, you have this brilliant awareness of the mechanics of things. I can hear it when you talk, like the mechanics, the anatomy of the body, the mechanics of the car, of the wood you were talking about, and using that as a powerful metaphor for ourselves, for our bodies, for our lives, for our businesses. So it's kind of like, my question is, do we need stress to get traction in our lives?
So, there's good stress and bad stress. Someone planning for a wedding has a set date, and I know this might be a sore subject right now in 2020, maybe something else, but that's something in the future that has a date on it. And with time being the only finite resource, that creates a healthy amount of stress, because if someday I'll meet with the photographer, and someday I will go taste the food, and someday I will go, get the socks for the groomsmen, like the task can expand at the time that it's given. And we've probably all seen people say, hey, I'm going to get married in a month. And they have pictures, they have food, they have music, and it's okay. And there's other people that say, I'm going to get married in 2 years, and they have food, and they have music, and they have pictures. And, it just depends on timing for different people. So a lot of what I focus on is, with time being the only finite resource, everything else is a variable. So yes, we need a certain amount of stress to do things. And oftentimes our comfort zone becomes too uncomfortable, and then we have to go create something, because Netflix, Doritos, and beer is pretty much a guaranteed win short term. And a lot of people fall into that, and have fallen into that with the pandemic. But at a certain point, you're going to realize, I'm putting weight on. My back hurts because I'm putting weight on. I'm drinking a depressant every single day. I wonder why I'm bummed out. You're going to hit that tipping point in the big picture, and then you're going to say, well, now a better short-term win is going to be going for a walk, or going to bed without the 3 most dangerous words. One more episode. Which, of course, brings us to our most dangerous piece of furniture in the household of the couch. Squash more dreams than anything else.
And I am poking at this. I recognize I'm really poking, because I want to see something new. Like, this is completely self-indulgent.
Yeah,
and
totally.
I'm in this exploration of, like, what happens if we take away the deadline and the time pressure. Because there's this belief that I will just sit and binge and watch Netflix forever. But what I just heard you say is like this brilliant, and this is my own, like what I'm finding about the brilliant creativity of people that is innate, that we can trust. Yeah, we'll sit on that couch for a while. But at a certain point, I don't know how long, at a certain point, and it's going to be different for different people, something's going to make us get up. So there was this, and this is an exploration, right? This is not me saying this is how it is. It's like, try it on for yourself.
That's what the same thing. I'm in the same boat. Here is a potential solution. This is not the answer. Yeah.
And I hear what you're saying, and I get it. Yeah. And I'm also like looking for like, and what else, and what else, and what else? Because what I do see for myself is that I create a lot of pressure in my thinking about things. So sometimes deadlines work for me. Like, I'm going to have this done by Friday. And it's like, it's motivating and it's inspiring. And then sometimes the deadline is like, oh my God, I got to get this done by blah. And I'm like going into this whole story about what happens if I don't get it done by Friday, when I realize, like, wait a minute, Stephanie, you just made up that deadline. Right. You get to call the shots in your business. There's nothing bad that happens other than you're going to be upset if you don't do it by Friday. Oh, I just created all this unnecessary pressure. So there's like, I hear that's what you're saying.
Right.
And I'm just poking at like, where is the necessary? It's like, is it pressure at all? Or is it simply creating something for us to bump up against? Or just to keep like the bumpers on a bowling alley or something.
Sure.
Or like, you know, like when you're a kid and you're learning how to bowl, and it just kind of like helps you, again, like come back into balance. And is it playful and is it light, or is it like heavy and full of pressure?
Right.
I wanted to share the comfy chair experiment. So this was something I did with a coach years ago and then heard it referenced again. And it's really an exploration of inspiration and where does it come from, and that kind of motivation. Any motivation can be really beautiful and empowering. I'm not knocking one, but personally, I prefer the ones that are inspiring and curiosity and creativity motivated primarily. Mm-hmm. Even when confronted with a challenge or a problem, it doesn't have to be hard. It can be like, ooh, I'm curious. What could I do? And playful, right? I realize this sounds also idealistic, but I am guilty. So the comfy chair experiment is basically you sit down in a comfy chair anywhere and you stay there until you get inspired to get up and do something. And then you do it. And then when you're done, you come back to the comfy chair and sit until you're moved and inspired to do something again. And I did this as an exercise at a workshop earlier this year or last year. And we did it as an hour. Like he said, okay, just be moved by inspiration for the next hour. And it caused us to go like, all right, how do I know when I'm inspired? What is moving me? What is it? What's my experience of this? And one of the things that I came out with it is that most of the time we're living in this effortless movement of inspiration. We just know what to do. It doesn't feel exciting. It's just like, I'm just moved to do it. Like, I just go to the bathroom when I have to go. I don't think about it. I don't sit there and decide. When I want something to drink, I don't think about what glass to use. I grab a glass and, I just do the things. And like most of our life is lived that way without any inherent pressure of thinking. But around certain things, like what do I do in my life? What do I do in my relationship? How am I going to be with my kids? Like, how do I raise my kids right? There's this, now I start creating pressure and I start thinking about what is required. And so it was again, like an experiment to live into. What is moving me? And how do I know when I'm moved? And we put so much pressure on it that it's just like whatever we end up doing is what we're moved to do. What if that's true enough? What if that's okay? Because as I think and ponder about those things, it brings that peace you're talking about, that you described so beautifully and you saw so beautifully in that Star Wars scene of being present and doing what I know to do. And there just isn't a lot of extra thinking. There's just enough to move. Wow, I talked a lot more than I usually do. What did you hear in that, if anything?
I always learn with my mouth open as well as I'm trying to work through something in my head. But I believe, you hit the nail on the head with you do what needs to be done and you just go. You take the breath, and again, I'm envisioning the lightsaber. We're going to have to put a YouTube clip in the show notes or something. But,
Yeah.
In the scene, she's under this pressure. There's all this stuff that seems to be coming down on her, and she's on the edge of a cliff at the same time, for anybody that hasn't seen the scene. And she just pauses and and then right after that, you can just, if you watch her face closely, it's almost effortless, where she's just letting happen what needs to happen. And I think that too many people that I've seen try to control too much externally versus just enabling themselves and being at peace within, or else you're going to find problems everywhere. Mm-hmm. And I think we've all interacted with people that have a problem for every solution. And for them, that's just a construct that they have created. But I truly embrace every day as a fresh new adventure. And I try to see, where can I try something new? Back when we go out to restaurants, I very rarely will order the same thing off a menu. I always try to find, hey, I've never had this, and let's say there's 10 different choices on the menu. Well, it must be pretty good for a restaurant to have that be 10% of their choices. So I'm going to push myself out of my comfort zone and try that. Mm. So, at one point, most people listening to this probably had the first slice of pizza. And I know I'm using Doritos and pizza an example. I'm just trying to use broad examples here. But at some point, you tried your favorite food for the first time. And before that, your whole life, you had no idea how amazing that was until that moment when you had that veggie burger or that sushi or that, whatever it is for you that's your favorite thing. You went your whole life without having any idea how amazing that is, or an experience, whether it's hiking or biking or kayaking. I've never done paddle boarding. I may love it. I just don't know yet. I haven't had the opportunity to do it. It hasn't been a high enough priority for me. So I believe that open curiosity, I'm all about experiential learning, if you can't tell already. But, I'm all about, how can we try something different that can be a little bit adventurous, something I haven't done yet? What am I going to learn from it? How am I going to grow? And to some people, that is nails on a chalkboard. And some people love structure. They love their routines. And other people hate routines. So again, in the spirit of balance, you need to find what's right for you. And for any entrepreneurs listening to this, there has to be just enough structure so that way you get the thing done and you keep the lights on and you take care of yourself. Because if the business goes downhill, then you have no control over that. So entrepreneurs need to take care of themselves because they are the asset. They are the most important aspect of the business. So there has to be, again, just enough pressure, just enough structure in a healthy way that's not overbearing. Because I think we've all seen people that spend all their time designing a perfect CRM and no time doing the thing. We have to have just enough, not too much, not too little. And again, that's different for everybody. So it's like the PSI in your tires, not too much, not too little.
So here's an alternate metaphor to play with in that.
Sure.
Just again, to play with, not saying that any of them are wrong. But
a solution.
What if it's rather than pressure or stress, it's structure?
Yeah.
Like that's what I was going for. I was like, no, I want something to bump up against. I want something to show me, to create form. Like I can't just be like, whoa. I mean, I could be just drifting forever. And I have at times, actually, as I was recovering from overly structuring and pressuring and disciplining myself, I swung the other way and went into like, I shall have no, like start shedding all of my old disciplines, and then realizing like, wow, I can use them just enough routine, just for me, just enough structure, just enough to hold it and still allow this freedom, spontaneity, flow, ease to come in.
Right.
So I'm wondering if there's like an area of your life or business or something you'd like to look at where it feels like you're still trying to find that dynamic balance, where you're still exploring like, and don't feel like you've quite found it. Because I'm betting there are some areas where you have and other areas that are probably a little stickier.
Sure. So I believe that in the spirit of recalibration and balance, just like we talked about in the beginning of this, there are times that with the smartphone, I can be working all the time. And for me, when I have more rigid business hours, and for some people that may look like Monday through Thursday or Monday through Friday, to be able to unplug a little bit more is super helpful. So I've been really good about the phone is on pretty much airplane mode all Sunday. At the end of the day, and again, I'm in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and I work with a lot of people out in California. So it's easy to schedule. They want meetings until 8 o'clock my time. So, using tools like Calendly are helpful to put up those boundaries to say, this is when I'm available. And I've actually pulled back a little bit on that, because when you're available all the time, people, they need a little bit of that scarcity as well for it to be important to say, well, if he has only 3 appointments available today, I need to have a good reason to utilize some of Ryan's time. So one of the things that I think I could be better with is the little bit of separation from work. So that way I'm even sharper when I am working. And I believe that the phones are a big part of that. And now with social media and doing what I do as an entrepreneur and, as part of the community that we met in, you're never not connected. And, now I'm connecting to people because of work things. And now I'm seeing pictures of their kids and their oatmeal. And, there's never a distinction between, everything is spilled into everything. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it's like when everything is spilled into everything and the personal life and the professional life are mixing.
Right.
How do you let go of thinking about work when you're in your personal life, like with your family? And how do you let go of thinking about your family when you're at work? Because they're like all this,
Right.
this whole mix, which is one of the biggest stresses, I think, that entrepreneurs who also happen to be parents or really also very devoted to their family have. So I'm wondering what that is for you. Like, before we got on this call, you came in with that smile on your face because you saw your son in his gunk suit. I'm breaking this up now. This is a reference again to Star Wars. That was what started the whole thing. And you had that smile on your face. And I wondered what it was, because I was like, I think Ryan likes me, but not like that. Like that wasn't about me. There was a thought that you had that was just delighting you, and you shared it with me. So I'm wondering, like, what is it that lets us be present wherever we are and able to drop the thoughts about work and all of the things that we're swirling? Like, what do you notice for yourself? Like, where do you get contracted and stuck thinking about work when you're at home, or vice versa? And where is it easy? Like, what do you see?
Yeah. So for me, location is really important. So right now I'm standing in our 3rd bedroom, which has been converted to an office, at a standing desk, which is very much my desk on cinder blocks. Hashtag $11 standing desk. And, I have a studio light here and everything, but my bedroom is only 10 feet away. And I think a lot of people are dealing with this right now as well. September through January, I had a co-working space. It was about a 15, 20-minute drive, depending on traffic, from here, 2 days a week, where when I got there, I got in that mindset of I am at work. I don't have the bathroom right here and the laundry, and I can, I love my son, but I can hear him under me right now, running around with his custom cardboard gonk suit, which I'd be happy to share a picture of. After the show, I can send you a picture. But for me, location is really important. So I've been in the process of creating a mobile solution. So I have a jetpack from Verizon, not a Boba Fett jetpack. That's just what they call it, as a Wi-Fi mobile hotspot. So I am able to work from anywhere. So this morning I worked for 3 hours down by the river, which, back when Chris Farley was around, that was something to laugh at. Now it's a life goal. It's to have, a van down by the river. But creating a physical space for that mindset separation of when I'm at work, I'm at work. When I'm at home is really important. I'm in the early stages of designing the concept of a tiny house, but a tiny office on wheels. So that way I can work even if it's from the driveway or, down by the river or, in a local park that has some climate control to it, heat, air conditioning, some of those creature comforts that's still pretty new in the grand scheme of us being human beings, but nice to have. So that is something that I need to push myself to get done. I was hoping by the end of the year that would be done. I had a couple priority shifts with the pandemic because the co-working space is very cool, but it's $130 a month for 2 days a week, where I could take that money and build myself a trailer. I looked at these, camper trailers and things like that, but I can use that for a couple of years and then I can sell it. I can't sell the time that I spent at the co-working space.
Right.
So for me, the physical distinction of being in a different place or arriving at home at the end of the day. Before I worked for myself, I worked in the medical field, and I would leave work and then I was pretty much done, and I would get home and I would just be at home because nobody was asking for their blood pressure at home. Nobody was asking for help with their programs at home. But now with that integration and that work-life symmetry and work-life dynamic balance, it is a little bit of everywhere. And I've been really intentional with my phone. The only noises this thing makes is a text message or a phone call. And I tried an experiment in February of deactivating the alerts for text messages. It was like the most freeing thing I have ever done. Because by definition, a text message is non-urgent. Yet the phone buzzes, lights up, and makes a noise. So it hijacks your system and distracts you from what you're doing. So maybe I need to revisit that now that we're having this conversation, because it is easy for things to spill over and we're always accessible. So I'm big on nature, and I think there's always room for improvement. So based on this discussion, I'm going to try my no text message alerts again for a month. Thank you.
Yeah, I love that idea. So what I'm hearing in everything that you're saying is this brilliance that I suspect you also bring to your clients in very practical, environmental, okay, how can I set up my environment? How can I create those boundaries? How can I manage my mindset with these things externally in the environment? And I'm curious about, so what came to mind when you were talking, I've heard this a couple places and I can't remember now who to credit. I've heard it in passing conversations. Maybe I read it in a book, that there was, I'm just going to say, a salesperson. And when he would come home to his family, I mean, he had all this stuff on him. In sales, it's very entrepreneurial too. Like often you do your sales calls at home, or you're prepping your customer lists, your prospect lists and things like that. And every day he would come home with full of work, everything swirling. And he knew that he wanted to be present for his family. So there was a tree outside his house. And before he went inside, he just took a moment and said, I'm hanging all my problems, all my thinking, all my stress on this tree. And he just visualized it right there. And then he went inside, and it was like that became a way for him to just drop it all. And the reason I mention this is because there are brilliant things that we can do in our environment to help us to have better focus and productivity and the boundaries. And what I'm exploring is that the place where I really get stuck, it's not due to my environment, it's due to my thoughts, my thinking, and my reaction to them. It's like my thoughts become like those text alerts on my phone that I can't, that are noted like beep, 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 beep.
Right.
And I think that I have to pay attention to them. And that's actually the thing that's creating stress and pressure in my life. And when I see those thoughts not as something that requires my immediate but not truly urgent, urgent but not important attention, and I learn how to not need to give my attention and focus to them, it frees up something. It allows me to function better and be more present, because it's those thoughts that take me away, whether I am in the environment that's conducive to it or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're able to, that visualization I think is really important, what you mentioned with the tree. Here it is, I'm physically hanging it up.
Yeah.
It's really powerful.
And I had this experience once. I wasn't even trying to do it. I'm trained in neuro-linguistic programming, and we do all kinds of cool stuff with like physicality and like moving problems and like pew, like this, right? And I was really caught up in something. I don't even remember what it was at the moment, but I was like thinking and overthinking and thinking and thinking and thinking about it. And I was talking it through. Like we were describing that sometimes I learn things when my mouth is open and I'm talking, right? Like I'm like, oh, that was interesting what just came out.
That's where those dots connect. Yeah.
Yes.
I just had to explain it to somebody.
Yes. And I was actually talking about myself to someone else, like, oh, and I'm doing this and I'm doing this. And I said, but I think, what if I just dropped it? And I went like this with my hands. If you can't see because you're listening, I just like opened my hands and I did it as I said it. It was that very quick physical. And I went, holy shit, I just dropped it. That's all I had to do was just drop it. And it wasn't the visualization that was magic, although that's what triggered it, right? It was the just dropping it. And that's what I imagine like that. I went to an event years ago where they had us like take off all our shoulds and stuff at the door before we walked through. And there was just such a powerful metaphor in that. It's not the visualization that's the magic. It's just the whatever it is that lets us drop it.
Yes. Yeah, that's super powerful. And, we do our quarterly mastermind events. And one of the exercises that Jake Ballantyne leads me through is a mental parking lot. And you just literally write all the stuff that's in your head, just put it on paper. If it comes up again, you write it again. It's not that, oh, I already wrote that. No, write it again. Put it all in the mental parking lot. You can deal with it after we would, do an 8-hour deep dive into our business. And, we'd keep that parking lot there. If we needed to add to it, we could put another car in the parking lot, put another car in the parking lot. And it's so powerful, literally, like you said, taking it, from your head down to your fingers, and then, here it is. Now it's on paper. Mental parking lot.
I like that, the mental parking lot. And there are exercises that can be very powerful in like writing down all the things that you want to let go of and then like burning it, right? Yeah. Like, and why is this powerful? Like we think about this as, like, oh yeah. It's not the thing. It's what it allows us to see that's always possible that we didn't know was possible. So in any moment, we can drop the thought that's plaguing us and creating suffering at any moment. Yes. We don't, because we don't know it. If we knew we could, we'd do it because it's plaguing us. If we knew that was what was doing it, and it wasn't the fact that, my wife, my partner is banging around dishes again and got it dry and left the toilet seat up and, and all these things, right? And the guy cut me off when I was on the highway and all of these things. If we knew it wasn't that, but it was just this thought that says it's not supposed to be that way, we would drop it, but we don't. and we can at any moment. And these are like beautiful little exercises or visualizations that let us know what's always possible that we don't know.
Yeah, the first time that somebody explains, I think what you're alluding to me, it totally confused me. He goes, there's things that you know, and then there's things that you don't know. But then there's this whole bigger circle that's you don't know that you don't know. And I was like, what? He drew it on the picture. He goes, this circle is what you know. You know how to cook pancakes. You know how to brush teeth. And then the bigger circle is what you know that you don't know. Okay, I know that I don't know how to fly a plane. I know that I don't know how to fully rebuild an engine. And then he goes, and then there's this bigger circle of I don't know that I don't know. And it took me a little while to like chew on it. I used the word marinate. I had to marinate on it for a couple days. And I was like, and then it finally like clicked. I'm like, oh yeah, there is a lot of things that I don't know that I don't know. But maybe that's why I like adventure so much, because I learn new things that I didn't know about, or I go new places, or I try new things, try new foods, whatever it is. And then I was like, maybe that circle isn't this big. Maybe it's this big. Maybe it's the size of the state. There's so much that I don't know. But being adventurous and being willing to push into that and make a little bit of a chip into that. And even if it's the tip of the iceberg, that's still fun.
I love that, Ryan, because I think I've thought about this for a while. Like, it's a miracle that we change.
Yes.
Because the way our minds are designed, our critical minds, this part of our mind that we give so much credence to much of the time, is designed to make connections, reinforce assumptions and beliefs that we already have, and retain and store and retrieve information that we already have, right? And yes, learn new things from our environment, but usually it's like self-reinforcing. It's like the same belief again and again. And yet there's this miraculous thing that happens, like what you're describing, in the moment when you didn't even realize that there was something that you didn't know. You never thought about it before.
Right.
But you did. And in that moment, a whole new world of possibility opened up just because you were willing to, you just noticed that there were things that you didn't know.
Right. So for everybody listening, I'm pointing to my head right now. I call that a software update.
Yeah. Those software updates are, more and more what I'm looking for myself. I've moved from, because and then I can use all the tactics and strategies and things in alignment with that. Like I think that there's this spark within us, this creativity that doesn't come from our critical mind, but comes from, I don't know, what is it, inner wisdom? I don't know where it comes from. We can call it God, we can call it source, we could call it
the force.
The force, yes. Thank you. That was obvious. But whatever it is, it's like that inspiration that allows us to change when it shouldn't be possible, because we live in our little bubbles. And when we have that first realization, there's something I don't know. What could it be? What am I not seeing? What else is possible? Just that question, so powerful. And being willing to be in that space instead of just looking at what so many of us do, what I've done, what I see clients do, looking at the problem, which takes us into it. Like, why am I doing this? Why is this happening to me? What is, why, we used to say in NLP, why is the lie? Now, it's not always the lie, but in that case, it tends to be like, why am I doing this? Spirals me into the problem. Like my head is buried in it, instead of what else could I do? Which pops me up out of it. Like, what else is available? What else is possible?
Right. Yeah, sometimes we need to look at our problems or our solutions through a microscope, and then other times through a hot air balloon, from a hot air balloon. Yeah.
Yeah, like what I'm getting in this conversation with you, Ryan, which is so beautiful, and I think you embody this really beautifully, is it's not one or the other, it's both. It's like, let's find this way of being with this dynamic balance in life, this way of being with the adventure of life that takes us just outside of our comfort zone enough that we discover things we don't know,
Right.
but also gives us enough stability and structure and comfort and all of those things to come back home and to not lose ourselves in it or be too scared to do anything and just hide under the bed for the rest of our lives.
Right. Right. Because that's the last thing I want this to be is, overwhelming or, so much of a shift that I don't want you to just say, well, I'm just going to go back to Netflix. And I also don't want you to say, well, I'm going to go off the grid and go up to Alaska, like, into the wild story. Again, that's the bell curve. I want you to get somewhere in between there.
I think I'm so glad we had this conversation because that's the experience I'm having from you. And I'm sure you have many gifts, but that is one that's jumping out at me, like that
Thank
this
you.
is what you can help people to do. Just that the words dynamic balance are in that, and recalibration right along with it. Like those words really speak to me for you of what you're doing and what you're modeling for people too and helping
Right.
them to do.
Right. And so I'm in the early stages of it right now, but I want to create a plan and just enough framework for everyone. This might be a book, it might be a course, but how do you have just here's the framework of life and business. And like Jake has done a wonderful job with this, and you can serve people with a very specific niche from all over the world in a Facebook group. And you can serve so many people and you can make such an impact. And then you simply offer opportunities for people to raise their hand for more help. And the right people will raise their hand. And again, I want to celebrate him because from our first discussion, there was never salesy, there was never pressure, there was never scarcity. I mean, we were just on a training recently, and he said, this is going to be available next month, but unless you're in the hospital, you need to be doing stuff over the course of the next month. I'm not going to tell you need to do this by midnight, but you either need to, get the help from this program or, find something out. He goes, I want you to make progress. And, I love that. We've just become really close over the last couple of years. But, with this pandemic, I think a lot of people have seen that they can live and work, from anywhere or from home. And I think these companies are seeing that, well, I was having you come in and type on a keyboard. I sent the keyboard home. I don't need to keep the lights on in this building. So just stay home. And, people are, again, recalibrating and figuring out that balance again of, well, now I'm saving 10 hours a week where I'm not in the car commuting back and forth based on the typical commute. So how do I use that time? Am I going to go deeper into work? Am I going to go deeper into family? Am I going to learn a new skill? And I think we see on the news that the world is on fire and everything is wrong. But for a lot of people, they have never had more time and more money than they do right now, because they're not spending that time and resources and money commuting, and they're able to reallocate. For some people it's 2, some people it's 5, some people it's 10 hours a week, which adds up really quickly. But we have to be intentional with how are we spending that time. And that's why I try with, the people that I interact with is a lot of us just need to tweak the formula a little bit, because time is the only finite resource. Time is the variable. Time is the only finite resource. So that is the constant. Everything else is a variable. And I think too many people try to cram way too much into the day. where it's unrealistic. A lot of people have prioritization problems or an inability to prioritize. The word priority was singular for its first 500 years of existence. It wasn't until like the 1940s that we turned it into priorities.
Mm.
And then we wonder why we're so stressed out. How can you have more than one priority? It's like trying to climb two mountains at once. It's not going to work. So, that's a big thing, is prioritization. What is the main thing? And, just to throw a resource to everybody, Essentialism by Greg McCowan, wonderful book, has changed my life and my business. And just the 80-20 principle, the more and more I learn about that, is just hugely helpful for life and business as well. I can send you a link to the podcast, but Mitch Matthews, who is in the personal development world as well, was one of my first mentors, and he runs the Dream, Think, Do podcast. And he had, I believe it's Perry Marshall. Yeah, Perry Marshall on around 80-20 when it came to sales and marketing. And he talked about, the fractals within that of, 80% of the company's revenue came from 20% of the people. And then a step further, 80% of that 80% came from 20% of that 80%. It's pretty wild how that stuff works, but it works at home too. I used it one time when I was vacuuming. I said, I have a couple extra minutes here, so I'm going to vacuum the area of the house that I use 80% of the time. And when I described it to my wife, I wasn't truly fluent with the 80-20 at that point. She said, if I heard you correctly, are you telling me that you're proud of using 20% effort on a fifth of the house? Help me understand that. So it was pretty amazing. But yeah, if you have like 3 minutes, you can vacuum like the entry, the hallway, the kitchen, and buzz through the living room and stop. And you have vacuumed 80% of the dirt in 20% of the time. So it's not every time I vacuum like that, but if I have a couple extra minutes, I feel pretty productive.
Yeah, that's so funny. And it's incredibly clarifying to look at your life in those terms. So just to fill in a little bit about the 80-20 principles, like, what's the 20% of your life where you get 80% of your results in any given area? And then you can keep breaking it down. That's the fractal pattern there, right? So, and wow, that's clarifying. Like, I can drop all this stuff. I remember looking at that in terms of marketing and going, wow, all my results are coming from email and blogging, and like growing my email list and creating content that's attracting people via, SEO content. That's where I should double down right now. Like all the other stuff, that's like more, it was more than 80%. And here are the customers on my list who are spending the most money with me. And they're like a fraction. They're usually around 20% of the whole. Oh, more people like that, serving those people in a deeper way. Very clarifying. And I also hear in what you're saying that an acknowledgement and an awareness that it's not all about productivity. Like when we start to like micromanage and make our lives more productive, it takes some of the fun out of it. Like part of the fun of adventure is that you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how to do it efficiently. You can't. You've never done it.
Right.
And there's like this surprise and delight factor that isn't possible when we're trying to like control and make efficient and optimize the thing, right? So both are wonderful. And that
dynamic balance.
Yes, dynamic balance. Like that's the brilliance of, please do create this framework, however it looks, Ryan. I think you can bring to it something really beautiful in that, like you see it, you see the world that way through both of these. Like I get both, and we need that understanding. So it's not just one or the other.
Right.
We don't
and
get
just
lost.
To boil it down very, very, very simply, with the current situation of everybody being online, there's never been more eyeballs on screens in the human history. You can find the specific person that you want to help them with a specific problem. There are enough of those people. And I truly believe that once this passes, and even now it's starting, I see this huge wave coming up of micro niches with group facilitation. And if you can help 40 people at $195 a month, if you help those people for a year, that's $96,000 a year.
Oh, you've been crunching the numbers.
And if you do that in a group format of, 1 hour a week or an hour every other week, it's anywhere from 2 to 4 hours a month. That's pretty cool leverage. You're helping those people with a specific problem that's in your expert zone from anywhere. And then you can do with all the other hours of the month whatever you would like. And yeah, there's going to be sales conversations in that. There's going to be marketing. There's going to be this, that, and the next thing. But when it comes to the rigid schedule of it, instead of having somebody else dictate 40 hours a week at these times, we all know it's usually more than 40 hours, versus how do I share my hyper-specific gift with specific people to help them with a specific problem? And if I can help 40 of them at that number, or 20 of them at double that number, or 80 of those people at $100 a month, you can do this. It's not going to happen in a month, but you could scale up quickly. And again, it's how do we use that time formula differently? That time is the constant. People try to look at time as a variable, but it's not. It's the only thing that's guaranteed. Those are the numbers that are guaranteed. Everything else is a variable from there. And I know for me and any other coaches that are listening to this, or your coach or personal trainer, or anybody that's worked with anybody one-on-one, it can feel at times like babysitting or herding rabbits. You're chasing people a lot. And then if somebody cancels, they want to make that time up. There's no such thing as making time up. It doesn't exist. Yet we try to cram all these things to say, well, I missed my session in week 2, so let's do 2 sessions in week 4. And then that happens to you, the coach, or you, the expert, 5 or 6 times. And before you know it, you are so burned out and exhausted and bending over backwards that you end up hating what you do. And that's what I hate to see, because, entrepreneurs, they start with the best of intentions. And we want to have some control of our time for it to be enjoyable and for it to be profitable. But at some point, a lot of people lose one or more of those things. And then after a few years, a lot of people are like, I hate this. I'm going to go back to Lowe's and stock lumber for the same money, and I'm going to be happier because I don't have to deal with all these extra problems. And, people want to have their own business. They want to share their gift with the world, but they don't want to be a manager. So there's a very specific niche that I want to help and serve of, I just want to do my thing and help people with my specific skill set in a group format from an online setting. And that truly is scalable, because whether there's 10 people in the program, 40 or 200, it's still the same 2 to 4 hours a month. So that's what I'm on a mission to help people with, because the time is just so important, and there's, so many other variables. But, when we talked earlier about, how do we protect time? How do we have just the healthy amount of structure? If I know that I have one set appointment this week that I am treating like a wedding or a funeral, I will not miss it. I will not miss it. And then, you have that dose of adventure to make your own calendar the rest of the week. I think people are realizing with this pandemic that, well, if I don't have to be at work at 9 o'clock, then, I can start at 9:30, or maybe I don't need an alarm clock. That's one thing that's really powerful for me. There's only a couple days a week where I use an alarm clock. For the most part, I wake up consistently when my body is ready, and I'm so much sharper when it comes to that. So that's the tip of the iceberg of the super secret project. Is no longer super secret that I'm working on.
You just came out of the closet with that, Ryan. Yeah, that's right. I just wanted to reflect this to you because it's super powerful. Like, just think about this. I'm going to make all this stuff up right in this moment, right? But let's do it. It's called dynamic balance. how to help people with your specific genius in online group settings in 2 to 4 hours per month so you can live the adventure of your life. Something like that. Like, holy smokes. Like, I mean, that's just like the gist. And you have to back that up, right? But
right.
Just hearing you talk, you have credibility and authority for that, because I get that you have thought about this. You have crunched the numbers and you have worked in the trenches, not just in your own life, but with your clients.
Right.
And like how to create your version of this, right? Because it's going to look different. Like it's a framework.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a journey you put them through, but it's
very
not,
much fill in the blank.
Yeah. Yes. Like it can't look the same for everyone because we have different skill sets, and finding who you are best suited to give the most results for. So like you could put anyone through your framework and they're going to learn something, but some people will be it'll be like suited to them, right? Like who are those people? So they can like, whoosh, it's like that slide that just whoosh, launches them into this life.
About 20% of the people are going to have 80% of the success.
Yeah, and then you make that 20% is your super, super niche, whatever that is. Right. And you discover who it is by putting people, good stuff, Ryan. Oh my God, that's good.
Cool. Thank you. I appreciate the feedback. I'm going to have to go back and listen and write down exactly what you said because it was a great flow.
Woo.
Thank you.
Oh, I liked it. Thank you for sharing that. I get the inspiration shivers.
Nice. Very nice.
So as our conversation is coming to a close, what is the biggest insight or thing you'd like to take from this conversation today?
I'm going to take the location more seriously. I need to really, crunch the numbers on, a camper trailer versus a tiny house versus a tiny office kind of thing, because I don't want a huge footprint. I don't want a brick and mortar building. I want something that's mobile and something that, as I scale up, an F-350 with a 20-foot trailer is on my roadmap. So I'm not going to need this thing forever. I'll share one more quick story when it comes to time and attention if people have too much going on in their head. So I was putting a lot of thought into this whole camper trailer thing. And one of my frustrations was like, I'm packing up my lunchbox and I'm going to, again, go down and work by the river for the day. I was like, it would be really nice to have a hot lunch, to, reheat my, veggie sandwich or whatever I'm working on that day, or a hot cup of soup. That would be nice. So then I start crunching the numbers and I was like, all right, well, if I'm going to get a truck, I'm going to get something that's going to last me, a long time. It's going to be, this package, it's going to have this, it's going to have this motor so I can pull the trailer. So I built it on the website, $60-some thousand for a pickup truck. And I realized that sounds crazy, but that's what they go for now. And then, well, I want this camper that can do this and that. Here's another $35,000. So I'm, close to $100,000. And I'm like, my initial problem is I want to have a hot lunch. So I went on Amazon for $29 and bought a Coleman butane camping stove. It's the exact same color of my car. Just funny how it works like that. And now I can have a hot lunch anywhere I want. So for anybody listening that's trying to come up with a huge grand plan, think about what is the finish line? How can you scratch a version of that itch now? Because I've spent a lot less mental energy thinking about that camper trailer and much more energy being productive in my business now that I have a $29 butane camping stove. So I can have a hot cup of soup. So it's those little things. What version of the itch can you scratch now that's closer to your North Star that's going to help you get there? Because, we have, my visual aid here. Apologize for tearing the office apart, but this is something I did for a corporate presentation. This is $24. This is 24 hours we have to spend. And a lot of people get overwhelmed when they look at that. I want to change my life. I want to do things differently. They look at all of this and they're like, oh my goodness, I can't change all of that. Okay, well, here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. When you're asleep, 1, getting ready for bed and getting up in the morning. One for movement, one for randomness, bodily functions, showering, this, that, and the next thing. And then, this looks a lot more manageable to do this. If somebody's working for somebody else, here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If you're working for somebody else or even working for yourself, if you keep your business hours there. So here are $5 we're left with when we're not asleep or working or getting ready for either of those. So then we need to decide what to do with these 5 hours a day. Do we want to watch a movie on Netflix? 3 hours left. Where does the time go? Right there. That $5, how is that going to change? And then I toss around a bunch of quarters to everybody because I say, I want you to take 1% of the day, which for all the math whizzes out there is between 14 and 15 minutes. For you, 1% for number one. You have to put yourself on the priority list and start here. 1% of the day, whatever you want to do. This is not a time to catch up on your email. This is time to do something that you want to do. Let's go for a walk, stretch, work out, play with the dog, play Legos with the kid, watch Star Wars, whatever you want to do. Start with that 1% for the day. And that was a very long answer to your question.
I love it. It was perfect.
I get excited about it.
It's contagious, Ryan. You really have a gift for expressing this, and I'm so glad that you shared it with me and with
Thank you for having me.
Who will listen to this. So where can people find you? What's the best place to connect with you?
Sure. So I spend most of my time on Facebook when it comes to social media and connection and stuff like that. So my name is Ryan Dunphy. Yes, just like Modern Family, Dunphy. I'm Ryan Patrick Dunphy, so just a wee bit Irish. If I have any Irish friends out there. I run the Adventurous Entrepreneurs community, which is a Facebook group. And I mentioned Jake a couple times, in the stories. He runs the Speakers, Authors, and Coaches Network. And I'm the Director of Member Support there as well. So I'm highly connected to that community. So anybody that's a speaker, an author, a coach, or any message-driven entrepreneur would benefit from that. I'm also on Instagram, learning how to use that. I'm also on LinkedIn. I have never had a Twitter, so you won't find me on there unless there's a fake profile. But Facebook is the easiest place to find me. Adventurous Entrepreneurs Community, Speakers, Authors, and Coaches group. It's where I spend a lot of my time.
And I can highly recommend that personally myself. That's how I connected with Ryan originally, through both of those Facebook groups. They're great places to connect with people and learn, good quality groups. So definitely check them out.
Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Ryan. This has been a pleasure.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. And I guess we'll close with, may the force be with you always.
Hey, thanks for joining me for today's Wildspire conversation. If you'd like to receive a weekly Wild Creation email from me filled with more inspiring stories, marketing experiments, playful questions, new podcast episodes, videos and freebies, and anything else I'm playing with, go to theawakenedbusiness.com/wild creation. Until next time, may you know yourself as the gorgeous wild creation you are.